Ethan Bellwether, a renowned architect in his early 40s, clutched the worn leather steering wheel of his vintage Volvo, his knuckles white. The biting wind of upstate New York whipped through the bare branches of the roadside trees, a stark reminder of the brutal winter just loosening its grip. But Ethan wasn't thinking about the weather. He was escaping. He was fleeing the suffocating memories, clinging to every corner of his Tribeca loft. Memories of Sarah, his beloved wife, lost too soon to a cruel twist of fate. He'd sold the loft, a space they'd lovingly designed together, a modernist masterpiece overlooking the city that never sleeps. But now, it was just a mausoleum of their happiness. The city, once a source of endless inspiration, had become a cacophony of grief, a constant reminder of what he'd lost. He needed quiet, solitude, a place to breathe again. A journey of self-discovery, perhaps. Ethan hoped this move would finally get him on the right path in healing. The real estate agent's words echoed in his mind. 5 acres of rolling hills, far enough from the town to offer complete privacy, but close enough for convenience. No HOA. No Homeowners Association, a concept Sarah had always derided as stifling and soul-crushing. The absence of one was a major selling point, a beacon of freedom in Ethan's search for a sanctuary. He longed for a place where he could just be, where the only rules were the ones he made for himself. A thrilling story was about to unfold. Finally, he crested a hill, and the landscape opened before him. A small, dilapidated farmhouse stood sentinel on the horizon, surrounded by a sea of golden grasses swaying gently in the breeze. The property had a quiet dignity. A sense of resonated deeply with Ethan's own broken spirit. He pulled the Volvo onto the gravel driveway, the crunch of the tires breaking the silence. As he stepped out of the car, the wind carried the faint scent of pine and damp earth, a balm to his weary soul. This was it, his escape, his new beginning, his chance to rebuild, not just a house, but his life. He already had visions for what he wanted to build. A barn studio, a haven where he could honor Sarah's memory and rediscover his passion for design. A place where, hopefully, he could finally hear the whispers of serenity. Agnes Thornton sat ramrod straight at her mahogany desk, the afternoon sun glinting off the framed diplomas adorning the wall behind her. Retired after a long and successful career as a litigator in Manhattan, Agnes had moved to the idyllic town of Willow Creek seeking a quieter life. But quiet didn't mean relinquishing control. As president of the Willow Creek Estates Homeowners Association, Agnes considered it her sacred duty to maintain the community's meticulously crafted aesthetic and social order. Her dedication was driven by the unsolved mystery of preserving the town's charm. A sharp, economical woman, in her early 60s, with hair meticulously styled into a helmet of silver, Agnes viewed any deviation from the established norm as a personal affront. The town's bylaws were her Bible, and she interpreted them with the zeal of a religious fanatic. Everything had its place, its purpose, its pre-approved color palette. The county records, delivered promptly to her inbox each morning, were her intelligence reports. Today, one particular entry had set her jaw tight. A construction permit had been issued to an Ethan Bellwether for property on the outskirts of the estates. Property Agnes believed should have been under their jurisdiction. The word architect sent a shiver of unease down her spine. Architects had ideas, visions that rarely aligned with Willow Creek's carefully curated image. This, she suspected, would require immediate and decisive action. With swift, practiced movements, Agnes composed a letter on her immaculate stationery. The language was formal, bordering on legalistic, a testament to her years in the courtroom. She referenced obscure passages in the HOA bylaws, emphasizing the requirement for all exterior construction to be submitted for review and approval. There was no room for interpretation, no space for negotiation. It was a demand disguised as a polite inquiry. The thrilling story was about to begin. The letter ended with a thinly veiled threat of legal action. Failure to comply, Agnes wrote, her penmanship precise and unwavering, may result in penalties as outlined in the HOA governing documents. She signed her name with a flourish, adding the title President, Willow Creek Estates HOA. Folding the letter with the precision of a surgeon, Agnes placed it in a crisp, white envelope, sealed it, and affixed a stamp. It was more than a letter. It was a declaration of war, a preemptive strike against a perceived threat to her carefully constructed world. Her journey of discovery would soon begin to make itself known. She already had another plan in mind, and Agnes smiled with cold authority. ready for whatever comes next. The insistent rapping at his front door startled Ethan. He hadn't been expecting anyone. Brushing wood shavings from his worn flannel shirt, he opened the door to find a woman standing on his porch, her expression as severe as the New York winter. It was the same woman whose name was on the letter. "Mr. Bellwether?" "Mr. Bellwether?" she asked, her voice crisp and clipped, as if each word had been carefully measured. "I'm Agnes Thornton, president of the Willow Creek Estates Homeowners Association." Ethan, though caught off guard, extended a hand. "Miss Thornton, please come in." Agnes didn't move. "I prefer to conduct our business out here, Mr. Bellwether. I received a concerning report regarding your planned construction." Her eyes, like chips of flint, scanned the property, taking in the dilapidated farmhouse and the scattered tools. Ethan sighed. "I received your letter. As I understand it, my property isn't actually part of your association." Agnes's lips tightened. "That is a matter of interpretation, Mr. Bellwether. While your deed may not explicitly mention the HOA, your property directly borders Willow Creek Estates, and in the interests of preserving property values and maintaining community standards, all construction within a certain radius must adhere to our guidelines. The unsolved mystery was if Ethan would comply or not." "With all due respect, Miss Thornton," Ethan replied, his voice firm despite the tremor of anxiety in his stomach, "I checked with the county. I'm not required to seek your approval for anything. This studio is entirely within my rights, and the journey of discovery won't involve you." Agnes's composure finally cracked. "A barn? Are you seriously planning to erect some dilapidated eyesore on that property? Do you have any concept of how that will affect the aesthetic of our community?" Her voice rose in pitch. "It won't be an eyesore," Ethan countered, his anger rising to meet hers. "It will be a sustainable, architecturally designed space that blends seamlessly with the landscape. Besides, it will show that a thrilling story to show people." Agnes scoffed. "Architecturally designed? By you?" "By you? I have no doubt it will be a monstrosity. I will not allow it." She pointed a finger at Ethan's chest. "You will cease all construction immediately, Mr. Bellwether, and submit your plans to the HOA for review. If you don't, I assure you, you will regret it." With that, Agnes Thornton turned on her heel and stalked back to her immaculately polished sedan. Ethan watched her drive away, a knot of apprehension tightening in his chest. It was clear that Agnes Thornton had no intention of letting him live in peace. The war, it seemed, had just begun. The rhythmic thud of Ethan's hammer against wood was a welcome distraction. He'd spent the morning framing out the foundation for his barn studio, trying to ignore the gnawing anxiety left by Agnes Thornton's visit. The physical labor, however, couldn't completely drown out the unsettling feeling that he was being watched. It was mid-afternoon when a black and white patrol car crunched to a halt at the end of his driveway. Ethan's heart sank. He knew somehow that this wasn't a routine visit. A tall, weary-looking officer emerged from the vehicle, his face etched with a weariness that seemed to extend far beyond his years. This had suddenly become a thrilling story. "Mr. Bellwether?" the officer asked, his voice surprisingly gentle. He had a name tag. "Miller." "Yes, officer," Ethan replied, putting down his hammer and wiping his brow with a forearm. "We received a noise complaint," Miller said, his gaze sweeping the property. "Apparently, someone reported excessive hammering." Ethan stared at him in disbelief. "Excessive hammering? Well, it is the middle of the afternoon, and I'm building a barn. It's kind of hard to do that quietly." Officer Miller offered a weary smile. "I understand, Mr. Bellwether, and frankly, I wouldn't call what you're doing excessive. But, you know how it is. We have to respond to all complaints." He paused, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Especially those coming from certain quarters." The unsolved mystery of who made the complaint was about to be known. Ethan's jaw tightened. He didn't need to ask who had complained. "So, what happens now, officer? Am I going to get a ticket for hammering during daylight hours?" Miller sighed. "No, Mr. Bellwether. I'm just going to ask you to be mindful of the noise level. Perhaps take a break around lunchtime, or try to keep the hammering to a minimum later in the evening." He looked around again. "Nice piece of land you got here. Plan on doing much farming?" "Eventually," Ethan replied, his voice softening. "I'd like to have a small garden, maybe some chickens. And of course, the studio, to design." "Sounds peaceful," Miller said wistfully. "I always wanted a place like this, far from the sirens and the Drama. Drama. His words hung in the air, a subtle acknowledgement of the situation. Just a note, officer. The journey of discovery in this town may be limited, Ethan added in a low tone. He pulled out a notepad and scribbled something down. Just doing my job, Mr. Bellwether. But if you ever need anything, directions or advice, don't hesitate to give the station a call. He gave Ethan a quick nod. Have a good day, Mr. Bellwether, and try to keep it down, all right? As Officer Miller drove away, Ethan stared after him, a flicker of hope igniting within him. It was clear that Miller saw through the charade, that he understood the harassment Ethan was enduring. He wasn't an ally, not exactly, but he wasn't an enemy either. In a town where he felt increasingly isolated, even a sliver of sympathy was enough to make a difference. The leaves had started to turn, painting the hills surrounding Ethan's property in fiery hues of red, orange, and gold. It was a beautiful sight, a reminder of nature's constant cycle of renewal. Ethan, however, found little solace in the changing season. He was preparing for what this town had to bring. He spent the morning raking the fallen leaves into neat piles, a task that Sarah had always enjoyed. He remembered her laughter as she'd leaped into the mounds of crisp leaves, scattering them into the air like confetti. The memory brought a sharp pang of grief, a reminder of the joy that had been stolen from him. Ethan paused, leaning on his rake, the weight of his loss pressing down on him. He decided to burn the leaves, a practice common in the area. He carefully built a small bonfire, watching as the flames licked at the dry leaves, sending plumes of fragrant smoke into the crisp autumn air. The warmth of the fire felt good on his face, a small comfort in the growing chill of the day. The sense of peace, however, was short-lived. A few hours later, a certified letter arrived, bearing the official seal of the Willow Creek Estates Homeowners Association. Inside, Agnes Thornton accused him of illegal dumping of organic waste, citing a section of the HOA laws that prohibited the burning of leaves due to potential air quality concerns. Ethan stared at the letter in disbelief. Organic waste, he muttered to himself. It's just leaves. He felt his anger rising, fueled by the constant harassment and the relentless pettiness of Agnes Thornton. The unsolved mystery of what Agnes would do next was building up. He tried to reason with himself. It was just a letter, a minor inconvenience. But it was more than that. It was a symbol of the relentless pressure he was under, the constant feeling of being watched, judged, and controlled. The journey of discovery has turned into hell, Ethan thought to himself. He tried to talk to his neighbors, hoping to find some understanding, some solidarity, but most of them avoided him, offering polite but distant greetings. He was an outsider, a newcomer, and they were wary of getting involved in his conflict with Agnes Thornton. The isolation was crushing. He felt like he was fighting a battle on his own, with no allies, no support. The weight of his grief, combined with the stress of the HOA harassment, began to take its toll. He found himself losing sleep, his appetite diminishing, his once sharp focus blurring into a fog of anxiety. A thrilling story for the town's gossipers was brewing, Ethan thought. Ethan knew he couldn't continue like this. He needed help. He needed someone who understood the law, someone who could fight back against Agnes Thornton's relentless attacks. With a heavy heart, he made a decision. He would seek legal advice. Even if it meant further isolating himself from the community, he had to protect himself, his property, and his sanity. The legal consultation left Ethan feeling both empowered and drained. He had a clearer understanding of his rights, but the prospect of a drawn-out legal battle was daunting. He needed something, a symbol, to remind him what he was fighting for: his freedom, his peace, his right to live as he chose on his own land. The unsolved mystery that had to get through him was his determination to leave town. An idea struck him with sudden clarity. It was brash, perhaps even a bit reckless, but it felt right. It was a way to reclaim his agency, to assert his independence in a way that Agnes Thornton couldn't ignore. The next morning, Ethan drove into town and purchased a sturdy 20-foot flagpole and a large American flag. The cashier raised an eyebrow at his purchase, but Ethan simply smiled, a flicker of defiance in his eyes. Back at his property, he spent the afternoon digging a hole and carefully setting the flagpole. The work was arduous, but with each shovelful of dirt, Ethan felt his resolve hardening. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the valley, he attached the flag to the pole and slowly raised it. The stars and stripes billowed proudly in the crisp autumn breeze, a vibrant splash of color against the backdrop of the rolling hills. It was a powerful sight, a symbol of freedom and independence that resonated deeply within Ethan's soul. The journey of discovery Ethan was on was filled with pain and sadness, but he was glad to have had. He stood there for a long moment gazing at the flag, a sense of quiet satisfaction washing over him. He knew that this act would provoke Agnes Thornton, that it would likely lead to more harassment and legal threats. But he didn't care. He had drawn a line in the sand. This was his land, his home, and he would not be bullied. The thrilling story has become a reality. The predicted response came swiftly. The very next day, Ethan received yet another certified letter from the HOA. This one, even more scathing than the last. Agnes Thornton declared the flagpole a flagrant violation of the HOA's rules regarding lawn decorations, claiming it was unsightly, disruptive, and detrimental to property values. She demanded its immediate removal, threatening legal action if he failed to comply. Ethan reread the letter, his anger simmering. He was done with being passive, done with trying to appease Agnes Thornton. He had tried to be reasonable, to be accommodating, but she had given him no choice. With a newfound determination, he sat down at his computer and began drafting a letter of his own. It was a concise, forceful document, informed by his consultation with the lawyer. He cited his rights as a property owner, refuted the HOA's claims, and declared his intention to keep the flagpole standing. But most importantly, he included a formal cease and desist letter, demanding that Agnes Thornton and the HOA cease all harassment immediately. He printed the letter, signed it with a flourish, and mailed it via certified mail. Return receipt requested. The solved mystery of how Ethan will continue his journey was to be discovered. As he dropped the letter in the mailbox, he felt a sense of liberation. He had finally pushed back. Now, it was time to see what Agnes Thornton would do next. The meeting with his lawyer, a sharp-witted woman named Ms. Levine, was both enlightening and unnerving. She confirmed Ethan's rights as a property owner, assuring him that the HOA's claims were flimsy at best. However, she also cautioned him that Agnes Thornton was a formidable opponent, a skilled litigator with a deep understanding of the law and a relentless determination. The journey of discovery came with new challenges that Ethan must face. "She's not going to back down easily, Mr. Bellwether," Miss Levine had warned, her eyes grave. "She sees you as a threat to her authority, and she's going to use every tool at her disposal to make your life miserable." Miss Levine emphasized the importance of meticulous documentation. "Keep records of everything," she advised. "Every phone call, every letter, every interaction with the HOA. The more evidence we have, the stronger our case will be." The unsolved mystery of if he has what it takes to stop Agnes and the HOA had to be put to the test. Ethan took her words to heart. He started a detailed log, recording every instance of harassment, no matter how small. He photographed every supposed violation, every accusatory letter, every instance of Officer Miller's visits. He also discovered that the HOA has plans to attack his home with a noise complaint. He decided he must act with strength. As Ethan meticulously documented, he began to feel like he was under constant surveillance. He noticed unfamiliar cars driving slowly past his property, and the unsettling feeling that he was being watched grew stronger. He started to wonder if Agnes Thornton had hired someone to spy on him, to gather evidence to use against him. Now was the exciting time for a thrilling story to unfold. He was starting to feel as if Agnes has a long reach over many things in the town. The thought was unsettling, but not entirely surprising. Agnes Thornton was, after all, a force to be reckoned with. He began to realize that he wasn't just fighting a homeowners association, he was fighting a powerful, determined individual with a network of influence and a deep-seated need for control. The question has turned from how Ethan will continue his journey to how the journey will challenge Ethan. It was then that Ethan truly understood the nature of his enemy. He wasn't just battling legal technicalities or petty regulations. He was fighting an unseen force, a shadow government operating within the seemingly idyllic community of Willow Creek Estates. And he knew that to win, he would have to be as resourceful, as persistent, and as ruthless as Agnes Thornton herself. He hoped he could do everything it took. Ethan decided to trust his lawyer and seek guidance. He knew she would know what to do. The stakes were set and the game was on. Ethan, armed with Ms. Levine's guidance and a growing mountain of evidence, decided to take a bolder step. He filed a formal complaint with the county, outlining the HOA's harassment and alleging abuse of authority. He meticulously detailed the noise complaints, the illegal dumping accusations, the flag controversy, and the HOA's attempts to exert control over his property, despite lacking jurisdiction. He attached copies of the letters, photographs, and his meticulously kept log. His heart was pumping. What came next was truly an unsolved mystery. He knew it was a gamble. The county bureaucracy could be slow and indifferent, and Agnes Thornton likely had connections within the local government. But he had to try. He couldn't passively endure the harassment any longer. The journey of discovery had changed. Ethan was no longer seeking peace, he was seeking justice. Weeks passed with agonizing slowness. Ethan continued to document every interaction with the HOA, building his case, brick by painstaking brick. The leaves had all fallen now, leaving the trees stark and skeletal against the gray winter sky. A tangible story Ethan was not sure how to write. Finally, a letter arrived from the county. They had received his complaint and were launching an official investigation into the Willow Creek Estates Homeowners Association. Ethan felt a surge of hope, the first had experienced in months. 2 investigators, a middle-aged woman named Ms. Ramirez and a younger man named Mr. Chen, arrived at his property on a blustery Tuesday morning. They spent several hours interviewing Ethan, carefully reviewing his documentation and examining the boundaries of his property. The interviews went well. Both officials were courteous and kind, and were curious if this would become a thrilling story. Afterward, they visited several other properties within Willow Creek Estates, interviewing residents and examining HOA records. Ms. Ramirez and Mr. Chen told him that it would be kept under wraps in order to have a fair assessment of everyone. Days turned into weeks, and Ethan anxiously awaited the results of the investigation. The tension was almost unbearable. He knew that everything hinged on what the county investigators found. The unsolved mystery was how the case would come to a conclusion. Then, a few weeks later, Ms. Levine called with the news Ethan had been longing to hear. The county investigation had revealed that the Willow Creek Estates Homeowners Association was operating outside the bounds of the law. They had been illegally collecting dues from properties outside their designated area, including Ethan's. They had been operating without proper permits for certain community projects. They had been improperly enforcing rules and regulations that were not aligned with county ordinances. But the most damning finding was that the HOA had unlawfully annexed land beyond their original boundaries, effectively expanding their power and control without proper authorization. They found that they have also used funds for things the HOA was not supposed to be using. Ethan's resolve with these discoveries strengthened. The county was preparing to issue a series of sanctions against the HOA, including fines, probation, and a mandatory restructuring of the board. Ms. Levine also revealed a stunning development. The county may be going to investigate other surrounding HOAs. This was the discovery Ethan was not expecting. The news hit Ethan like a tidal wave of relief. He had been right all along. He wasn't crazy. He wasn't paranoid. He wasn't imagining the harassment. The HOA was operating illegally, abusing its power, and violating his rights. And now, finally, they were being held accountable. And the journey of discovery has led him down a path he never thought. The news spread through Willow Creek Estates like wildfire. The county's findings were damning, and the sanctions imposed on the HOA were severe. The once imposing organization was now teetering on the brink of collapse. The journey of discovery was quickly coming to a near conclusion. The revelation of the HOA's illegal activities sparked outrage among the residents. Many felt betrayed and manipulated by Agnes Thornton, the woman they had entrusted to protect their community. The thrilling story was not over, the townspeople exclaimed. A petition quickly circulated, demanding Agnes's resignation as president of the HOA. The pressure mounted relentlessly, fueled by social media fury and whispered accusations at the local grocery store. Agnes, who had always thrived on control and respect, found herself increasingly isolated and reviled. What was once respect has turned to shame. Now, the world started to see a thrilling story. The county's legal troubles was quickly becoming Agnes' unsolved mystery. What was she going to do now that she had lost all of the power and grip she had on this town? She had a choice: go away and admit defeat, or stay and continue to fight a losing battle. Agnes had become the story of many people's conversation in town. Ethan watched the drama unfold from a distance, a sense of cautious satisfaction washing over him. He had won a major battle, but he knew the war was far from over. He still had to deal with the legal ramifications of the HOA's actions, and the underlying tension within the community remained palpable. It was more than the solved mystery than it was to him. Finally, the inevitable occurred. A press release arrived from the HOA, announcing Agnes Thornton's resignation as president, effective immediately. The statement cited personal reasons for her departure, but everyone knew the truth. The exciting journey was now over. Ethan read the announcement with a mixture of relief and a strange sense of unease. He had wanted Agnes to be held accountable, but seeing her fall from grace, stripped of her power and prestige, gave him no real pleasure. He had never wanted to destroy her, only to be left alone to live in peace. She has destroyed everything he had worked for. Now, she was left with nothing. However, news was quickly developing that she planned to run for town supervisor as a final act of power. She had to make sure that this would never happen. The unsolved mystery was, would Agnes rise again, or would the sun finally set on her reign in town? Ethan realized it might have just been the beginning. With Agnes gone, a palpable shift occurred in Willow Creek Estates. A new election was held, and a more reasonable, community-oriented board took charge of the HOA. The journey of discovery was coming to an end. The new president, a retired teacher named Mrs. Davison, reached out to Ethan, expressing her regret for the previous administration's actions and pledging to create a more inclusive and collaborative environment. A thrilling story, she emphasized, should build bridges, not walls. Ethan, still wary, agreed to meet with her. He was pleasantly surprised by her sincerity and her commitment to fairness. She acknowledged that he should not have been brought through so many challenges, and expressed wanting to fix what was broken. Slowly, cautiously, relationships began to thaw. Neighbors who had once avoided him started offering friendly greetings. He received invitations to potlucks and community events. People started asking him about his plans for the barn studio, expressing genuine interest in his work. A solved mystery. Agnes's exit truly brought light to the town. Ethan realized that Agnes Thornton's reign of terror had not only targeted him, but had also poisoned the well of community spirit. Now, with her gone, there was an opportunity to rebuild, to create a more welcoming and supportive environment for everyone. He participated in the town's meeting. Many people from the community thanked him and acknowledged all that he has been through. He spoke about his experience and the support he had received from so many people. The journey of discovery has come to an end. He understood the assignment. With the legal battles behind him and a sense of truce established, Ethan finally felt free to focus on his original purpose, rebuilding his life, both literally and figurative. The unsolved mystery behind why Agnes was so determined to hurt him was still a thought in his head. He returned to the framework of the barn studio. The wood had weathered over the months of inactivity, bearing the brunt of winter storms and the relentless passage of time. But it was still solid, still sound, waiting for him to bring it back to life. The journey of discovery was now coming full circle. He repaired the damaged sections and started to add the siding, working with a renewed sense of purpose. Each swing of the hammer, each carefully placed nail, was an act of defiance against the forces that had tried to tear him down. It was a tangible representation of his resilience, his ability to overcome adversity. A thrilling story he would be able to tell for years to come. As the walls of the barn began to rise, Ethan felt a sense of hope returning to his heart. He imagined Sarah's smile once they had completed what they started. He could envision her laughter echoing through the space, her spirit infused in every beam and rafter. More people came forward and helped build the studio. Ethan felt truly grateful to be able to form such a supportive bond. The new studio would be a gift that he would forever cherish. A piece of his old life was slowly returning, taking shape in the form of the barn studio. He knew that the grief would always be a part of him, but it no longer consumed him. He was learning to live with it, to channel it into his art, to use it as fuel for his creativity. He was learning that even in the darkest of times, there was always the possibility of renewal, the promise of a new beginning. As he wiped the sweat from his brow and gazed at the emerging structure, Ethan smiled. The barn studio was more than just a building. It was a symbol of his survival, his resilience, and his unwavering commitment to honoring Sarah's memory. It was a testament to the power of hope, the enduring strength of the human spirit, and the transformative beauty of rebuilding. Months later, the barn studio stood complete, a testament to Ethan's perseverance and the community's newfound spirit of collaboration. The unsolved mystery has created community. The studio was a beautiful blend of rustic charm and modern design, incorporating sustainable materials and energy-efficient features. It was a space where Ethan could create, reflect, and find solace in his art. To celebrate its completion and thank the community for their support, Ethan organized a small gathering. Neighbors came bearing homemade dishes and bottles of wine, their faces beaming with pride. The journey of discovery has shown Ethan that he has made new friends and found a place to call home. Ethan showed the community the plans for the studio that he and Sarah created many years ago. Many got emotional. One of Sarah's favorite flowers was a red rose, the same type that Ethan had placed in a vase. As Ethan raised a glass to toast the occasion, he looked around at the faces of his neighbors, now his friends. He felt a sense of belonging, a connection to this community that he had never expected. The solved mystery of if he was going to leave the town was long gone. He realized that the conflict with Agnes Thornton, as painful and isolating as it had been, had ultimately brought them closer together, forging new bonds of understanding and empathy. He learned that a thrilling story is just one chapter of one's life. As laughter and conversation filled the air, Ethan smiled. He had not only rebuilt his life, he had also found a new family, a new community, a new home. And in the process, he had discovered that even in the face of adversity, the human spirit can triumph, and new bonds can be forged, stronger and more resilient than ever before. The promise of serenity had finally been fulfilled. The heart of Ethan's story echoes powerful truths. Stand firm for your values, even when facing opposition. Don't let fear of conflict silence your voice. Respectfully assert your boundaries. Document everything and seek expert advice when navigating complex situations, legally or otherwise. Remember, initial solitude doesn't preclude eventual community. Often, standing up for yourself attracts like-minded individuals. Often, seek out Officer Miller, the unbiased bystander who can see both sides and provide gentle wisdom. Most importantly, understand that rebuilding is possible after loss. Let setbacks fuel creativity and resilience. Translate this into your own life. If facing workplace bullying, document interactions and consult HR. If a neighbor infringes on your property, politely but firmly assert your rights. Embrace challenges as opportunities for growth. The journey of standing up for yourself can ultimately lead to unexpected bonds and a stronger sense of self, much like Ethan found amidst the whispers of serenity. Start today to build the life you desire.